Hello, and welcome to the Wizard's Respite Sanctorum, the show that dives into all things TTRPG. Today, we're going to be doing a game review. We haven't done one of those for a minute. We're deep diving, and I think everybody out there is really going to be able to get a lot out of this one. I'm really excited. Zach is over the moon. I'm telling you right now. He's been talking about this game nonstop.
I have so
you guys.
much to say
If you
on this.
are
So much to say.
if you are an RPG enthusiast, this is you're gonna see a couple of guys nerd out, and you're gonna understand. You're gonna understand why. But before I jump into it, of course, I'm not alone. Zachariah from Old Man Gaming. Zach, how are we doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good, all things considered. I'm very excited to do this episode, this game that we are deep diving today. I have never had an experience like this in 44 years of life on this earth, and reading multiple systems and multiple games. I have never had an experience like this, so I'm very excited.
Guys, he has been gushing. He has been gushing for weeks.
It's almost painful. Like, there's downsides to my gush. There's downsides to my gush. Like, real crisis of faith downsides that we're going to talk about here too.
Well, without further ado, why don't we introduce Fate Core? Really fun, interesting system.
Dive on this.
I know. It's been. I was introduced to Fate Core in my 20s. I played several sessions of it. I wasn't able to continue all the way through the campaign. I've always wanted to go back to it. It is so much fun. It's such an interesting game. It was so different than other RPGs I'd played at the time. It's narrative first, which means you're developing your character stats through story. That was mind opening to me. It was like coming from AD&D and then going into Fate, where it's like going from math class to an art museum. Like, it's just so different. But it's also within the same hobby. I'm very excited also that we're able to return to Fate. We're going to be doing a actual play campaign. I'm going to be game mastering it.
Yeah.
This is a system that more people need to know about.
Yeah. And my thing is not even the narrative first, right? Because we played T-Shop. And that's narrative first.
Right.
And it's a solo game, though, and it's a different kind of bag. It's much more about, like, writing. And I'm not knocking T-Shop at all. But it wasn't the religious experience that this was. It was in its own way, because I had never played a solo game before. But this is the interaction between the narrative and the statistics. And that, to me, is what I have personally been trying to capture my entire life with writing games. And have never succeeded. And I had never truly read Fate. I had been introduced to Fate a couple of times. I had kind of an idea of what it was. And I listened to an absolutely stellar podcast called Two Monsters Rolling Dice. They play Fate. Absolutely stellar. I know that they're defunct now. It is worth every episode listened to go back and listen to them. I will plug them till the day I die. That being said, I enjoyed watching them, but the way they played, I didn't get it. I just didn't understand. So, give a little backstory, if you don't mind me ranting for just a second.
Yeah, go for it.
So, this has come from the fact that I somehow ended up game mastering everything on the channel again. And was, I don't say necessarily blown out, but I really needed a game to play. And so I went to Wiz and been like, I really need to play in an actual play again. I love game mastering Ordo, but I want to play something. And Wiz was like, definitely. We came up with a good subject matter. And then we decided on Fate as the system because I had never tried Fate. I knew he knew Fate. So I was like, well, let's try Fate. I want to do something a little bit more narrative because I've never really played in the narrative space. So I ordered a copy of the game from the independent guy. Tabletop Bookshelf.
Oh, yeah.
Check them out online, guys. Tabletop Bookshelf. I ordered from them. It got here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it got here in a reasonable amount of time. And I began to read it. All right. So, I have read RPG books a lot. Okay. I have a whole bookshelf here of RPG books that I have at least started to read or read some of. Okay. Many different systems. Right.
Sure, yeah.
I have a hard time reading a system. Like a hard time reading a system. Usually like I can read a little bit and then I've got to put it down and then I've got to peruse, I've got to go to the back, I've got to figure out what they're talking about here. It's not really written in the way that I want it to be written. I read the entirety of Fate, and I'm not a fast reader. I read the entirety of Fate in 2 days. The entire book, the entire system, back to front, and this is a 300-page, nigh on 300-page book. I read this like a storybook. I have never been that into reading. I couldn't put it down. Like, I would be upset. Like, my wife would fall asleep on the couch. I'd be upset when she woke up, and I had to stop reading it. This system, it's like they reached into my brain and pulled what I've been trying to do my entire life. And that is make a build with narrative elements. And that's what's really cool about this, is that it is not like, and that's what I was trying to explain to some people, because the other people playing with us are newbies. And they were
Right.
both like, this is very like out there, and it's very like whatever. And I'm like, it's not whatever. It is a build system, but the system is based on story elements instead of stats. And that is fucking awesome. It's so cool how they do this, because it's never like, oh man, I'm getting way too long-winded.
It's interesting. It is, and like, let's talk about how they do it for a second.
Yeah. I'm getting ahead of myself
because there's I don't want to necessarily like explain the entirety of the game, but there are certain elements that, just real quick, TLDR definition of, they have a couple of systems like aspects, which is essentially something that comes out of your character's background, is backstory. You decide what that is because you write the backstory. You make them a fundamental part of the character's stat block,
and they're
by
made
saying
up.
If they
you don't pick them out of a list.
Yeah. They're made up. They're part of the backstory. So if your guy is, has like something like he was raised on the streets, street fighter could be an aspect.
Right.
That's something that he came from. That's part of who he is. And whenever he's in a fight, you can use that as a bonus to your rolls because he's fighting. It makes sense. He's a street fighter. You couldn't use that if he was in an argument necessarily, because it wouldn't necessarily make sense unless maybe you posed it in a certain way, which forces you as a player to really think about how you're going to position your character, and that makes your character do things that make sense for them.
Right.
Their backstory, their personality, who they are, because that's their aspect.
Right.
Their decisions that you have to make are how you use them strategically, are who they are as a person. It forces your strategy to be story focused.
Right.
It's so interesting. Whereas like in Dungeons and Dragons, you maybe will use your sword because you have like a sword. That's your character. It maybe doesn't make sense, but that's what you do.
Right.
In this, it's who they are that gives you the statistical advantage.
And that's the thing, because who they are is the conversation, right? It's the conversation between you and the game master on when you can use something and when you can't use something. So like, just to expound on what Wiz was saying about the system without going into the full detail, there's aspects, skills, stunts, and fate points. The entire game works on your fate point economy, right? You have your fate points allow you to invoke your aspects. So like, if you're in a fight and you roll, you get an automatic bonus to the roll if your street fighter has fighting as a skill. But then if you want an even higher bonus, you can invoke your aspect by spending a fate point, right?
Right.
You only get so many, but here's the thing. That's why you set up your aspects to also have this thing called compel, which is a player or the game master basically points out that your character would do a thing negatively and you get a fate point if you decide to agree with it. So like the Street Fighter, in that case, maybe he is entering a bar and somebody is verbally starting an argument with him. Well, the best way to end it would be to just talk the other guy down, but he's a Street Fighter. His instinct is to fight. So the game master can be like, I'm going to compel you to punch him because that's what you would do as a Street Fighter. And then the Street Fighter can go, you're right, I would punch him. And then you get a fate point. So it's all about like telling the best story with the build you have. And one of the coolest things about that, to take it all the way back to what you were saying, is like when you're playing D&D or any stat heavy game and you have a sword skill, and this is something I've always tried to avoid when I'm writing a game, and it never really works out. But like let's say your sword skill is high, you're always attacking with the sword. It gets boring, but like to attack with something else does not have a tactical advantage because I'm better with this sword. So there's only, even if you describe it however you want to describe it, you're still just attacking with the sword, right? With this game, sorry, that is spam. With this, if you have a guy who's like combat expert, well, now you can invoke for shooting a gun, you can invoke for fist fighting, you can invoke for the knife fight, you can invoke for all these things, and there is a reason that your character, who is a combat expert, can use multiple things. And that is what's great, because it fits your build, but it allows you to be even more creative with how you're approaching a situation descriptively. What's even cooler about that is you can give yourself advantages that way. Because let's say you're the sword guy from D&D. He has to get in close because you have to use the sword. That's how your character is. You have to. Like that's the course of it. With this, I'm a combat expert. I have a gun. I'm going to stay away and shoot at the guy. Well, now I'm using the shooting skill instead of the fighting skill, and I have range. He can't just start hacking at me with his axe. You know what I mean? Like there's
but at the same time, maybe you don't want to use your gun because like it's going to make a noise.
Yes.
So now you have to think, okay, do I use my knife instead? Do I try and sneak up on him?
Right.
Like I am a combat expert, but I'm not super sneaky. It's a risk, but it's a risk either way. What do I do? Right. And now you have that like, okay, my guy would have to sneak up on him. He's smart enough to know this. He has a knife and I'll do it, you know, even though I'm not very sneaky. And it's just as valuable to do that within the context of the story, because if you use that gun, 100%, the GM is going to be able to offer you so many compels because you used a gun. It's loud, you know, all this other stuff. And that would, either way you go, it progresses as a story in an intelligent, logical way that feels like a story.
It is absolutely like having rules to a conversational debate about whether X would win or Y would win. And that's what's so cool about this. And like I said, like I just kept reading it because everything seemed to make sense. The other thing that I love about this game is like situationally, you can change the course of things with skill rolls instead of just attacking. So like, let's say you're in a bar and you're about to have a bar fight with a guy, but he has like really good like armor or something to the point where like you're not going to be able to do damage to him. Well, you could be like, I'm going to create an advantage where there's a bottle on the bar and I'm going to use the bottle to hit him. Well, then you roll on your turn to create that advantage. If you create that advantage successfully, then you get that bottle and you can invoke it for free. So you don't have to spend a fate point. You're invoking it for free. Getting that extra bonus. But here's the trick. If you fail the creation, the bottle's still there. You talked it into existence, but the other guy gets to free invoke on the bottle. He gets to it first and gets to whack you. That kind of stuff is just so fucking cool when you really think about like how the aspects and how things play out. One of the things that I loved about this is I kept reading it like, all right, where are the weapons and armor? Because that's going to break it. Anytime I read a system with real low numbers, it gets broken by weapons and armor. It has to, because if you're soaking damage and you can only possibly do 3 damage, your armor is going to be fucking broken, you know, or your weapon's going to be insanely broken. It's not. It's not, because the way it works is, let's say you hit them, but the armor absorbs everything, then you get a free boost on your next attack. So yeah, you stop them from taking damage, but now you can get an extra +2 on your next attack because you've realized where their armor is and how to attack around it. Like, that's amazing. It works well for both people because to have the armor gives you that extra turn where you're not taking damage, and maybe even a couple other extra turns because they have to boost to even hurt you. But at the same time, failing to get through the armor is not a failure because you're learning how to fight the guy better. Like, that's the kind of stuff that this system does, that it just does intuitively. And I am just so fucking floored beyond any measure by it. Like, yeah.
It's a beautiful way to balance things. It's a beautiful way to balance it.
Yes.
Because, you know, like you said, it's not just constantly stacking. Every time you stack up, the other person stacks up too. There's a time element. So, you know, it is good to have armor, but at the same time, it's not a guarantee of anything. Right. You know, it's not like, you know, your stats go so wildly off that all of a sudden you find yourself just constantly swinging at a guy and never hitting him.
Yeah.
You know, and you're always having the opportunity also to look for different ways of overcoming that, which gives their players more opportunities to make decisions, to look for more bonuses, to look for more invokes, you know, or advantages. And that gives, every time you give the players more opportunity to look for choices, you give the entire table an opportunity to make a more dynamic, interesting, fun game and story. And like just the idea of, you know, going in there into a bar, like you had said, grabbing that. If you just actually take what happens in that bar, you know, whatever the roles may be, and put it on a movie screen, you're watching an action movie.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it feels like an action movie. You're playing an action movie. It's a blast. You know, it is. Like,
and that's definitely what it's geared to do. Like, they even say that many times in the book. Like, you're supposed to be trying to look at the most cinematic way that something can happen. And that's how everybody's going to be rewarded the most, you know.
Now, for people out there that this is a little like Greek too, one thing I want to throw out there, the personal visual experience that I had like this reminded me of the first time I played Uncharted. I'd only played, you know, very specific types of adventure games in the past, and then Uncharted comes around way back in the day. To me, that was the first time I'd ever played a game that felt like I was playing a movie. Now, that kind of cinematic experience of gameplay has, from my understanding, like been in a lot of games. There's been a lot of games that I played since then, but that was the first time I had played a game like that. And Fate is kind of doing the same thing for an RPG. It feels like you're playing a movie. It feels like you're playing like John Wick, or you're playing Star Wars, or you're playing not the game version of it. You're playing the movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think that, yeah, that's what's interesting. It's like single mod. This is what I was trying to do with single mod, and it didn't work the way this was. And to speak with my cons about this game. My cons about this game are not the game itself. I know that usually when we do these deep dives, it's been a long time since we've done a deep dive on a system. We usually, like, at some point we're like, hey, what are the downsides of this game? I'm not going to have any. This game was a religious experience for me. It was hugely eye-opening. The cons is that it broke my brain, because I am like a year and a half deep on working on this huge, very tactical pirate game called Between the Swords and the Sea. If you guys watch the actual play here, it's Dual Bastards is the system for that. The system for that is what we use in Dual Bastards. And I'm at a point where I can finally start writing the rough draft of it. I'm not gonna lie. There was a week. There was 7 straight days where I was like, I don't know if I should write this. I don't know if I shouldn't just write the entire world up and make it a Fate thing, because that's how good Fate is. It made me question any system that I had ever invented. It also made me wonder, like, why I have been making anything for anything outside of Fate. Like, that's how good I think this game is. Like when I first
Okay,
started reading
everybody,
it,
I've been hearing Zach tell me little bits of that, and I haven't had. This is my first opportunity to have a
yeah,
conversation about this because I've heard him say that, but I haven't had an opportunity to sit down and talk to him about that yet. I'm
dude,
glad that now I finally got the chance to talk to you about that.
we were playing Ordo. We're playing Ordo, and like, I like Ordo. I like single mod. The same time, the entire time we were playing Ordo, the last two sessions, because I think I had this book the last two times we recorded. I think I had already read the book.
Okay.
The last two times we recorded, the whole time I'm just thinking this would work so much better in Fate. I should have just written Ordo for Fate.
So
I should have just written Ordo for Fate. Ordo already had, Fate already has mental stress in it. It already has a system for that. It has a system for everything we ever needed in Ordo. We adapted single mod to it. And honestly, I don't want to talk bad about a product out there that people could buy, but at the same time, there are problems with Ordo. There are definite problems that at some point, me and Wiz are going to have to go back and do a 2.0 and like reassess things. Because there are definitely mechanical problems that I'm like, this doesn't work. We've got to change this. And like at that time,
which is the way for all games,
right?
Because Freecore was also a later edition.
This is a later edition.
Remember
the
that.
Fudge was bullshit, and that's what's even more interesting. And so when we first decided to play this, I went on to try and find a free PDF, because you can usually find a free PDF of a lot of games online. Just download it. It at least gives you a core idea of what the game's about. And I found this Fate, which was the original edition of Fate on the Fudge system, right? And
right.
I uploaded this to the group. And this was the stupidest thing I'd ever done, because this sucked. This is not good. This is not good. They hadn't figured it out yet. Like this was like way too out there, and like some of it didn't make sense, and like it wasn't.
It's
good.
definitely not as clean, and
Not
it's
even
way
remotely.
shorter. It's way reduced down.
I was
and
even like
the
looking at
core
it like
system's much better.
Yeah, and I was even looking at it like, I don't know if we can play this. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to double down, buy the book. Because when I started posting stuff, Wiz started pointing out inconsistencies with the stuff I had posted, because I was trying to make characters out of that. And I was like, man, okay, maybe I'm just going to double down and buy I bought this book. So they definitely had to improve it, but this is perfect. Like, it's perfect.
So here's this is kind of funny, because most of the time on our shows, I'm more like typically a little bit lenient on our. Actually, I'm probably way more lenient than you are on the criticisms, and I think we're kind of flipping here. Now because I do have some things about the book, about Fate. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Fate, and I'm super excited.
Getting a fight about it's like we've had so many subjects we could have gotten in a fight, but the thing that really gets us in a fight is Fate.
We'll see what the fate of the show is. No,
I want to say one more thing before you go into your downsides. One of the things that I absolutely love about this is when I first started even looking at narrative games, you know Philbilly, right? I think he was on the show at least once, and he's a foundation member on Old Man Gaming. He played Astral Drive with us, the Turtles, all of that stuff. He's called the Build Master for a reason. He loves numbers and stats and stuff like that. When I first started to think about narrative games, right, I was like, he's never a guy that I would go to. Like, not because obviously I have a problem with him, but because that's not his kind of game. His kind of game is a numbers game, you know? So I'd never like go to him with like, come play this storytelling game with me. He wouldn't, it's not his bag. After reading this, I think he would love this game. And that to me is the true testament, because this is a narrative game that a build guy would probably love. And that's the thing that really, I was like, oh my God, this is for everybody. Like, once I got through it.
Interesting. Yeah, that's going to be kind of interesting, because like my first thing actually, I was going to start out super light, and remember, this is coming from a guy who loves this system, has been excited for the last 20 years or so to want to get back to it. But my first thing my first sort of detraction was that I didn't think that there are games that are good for different things. I've often said this about Dungeons and Dragons, because Dungeons and Dragons people often say that it is the best role playing game ever. I have always said it is the best role playing game for you. Maybe try playing a different game. Let's see. But everybody has their favorite game, and they are built very differently with very different purposes.
Right.
Fate has a very specific purpose. It is, just like any other game. And it is what we are talking about. It's that narrative first construction of a story and an adventure and an action. But when it comes to like building and collecting loot and accumulating little bits of power and that type of stuff, and building your character, super granularly, with like you would like just like inserting things and strategically like building them up and being a build, for instance, that wasn't what I thought Fate was built for. But it sounds like you think that there's a way for a build master to love this. So I'd love to see your take on this.
Well, here's the thing. If you're a build master guy, yes, the build master guy is going to have to think a little bit more narratively than mathematically. Really, when you look at Fate, whoever designed it does not like numbers at all. To the point where the only numbers in the game are either replaced with symbols or words. If you just don't like the numbers, like they found a way that you never have to look at a number and play this role playing game. That being said, I think that there is something to. So I have a character for the actual play. I'm gonna talk about him a little bit. I guess it'll be a little bit of his teaser for everybody. His name is Duncan Hardy. Okay, the actual play is gonna be espionage spy based. When doing his build, I had to think about everything, because you want your aspects to be able to be compelled, but you also want them to be able to work for you. So every aspect I put on there, I had to think of, how does it get compels? How does it get invokes? Which to me is a very hyper-specific kind of build, because you can't just put on here badass, 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 because then you'll never get compels and you'll never get fate points back. So you have to find a way to make your cool things sound bad. And to me, that kind of speaks to the build brain. On top of that, you have what's called a skill pyramid for your character, which I had never seen anything like this. And I actually fucking love it. Of course I do, because I love everything about this. The way the pyramid works is you have skills, and those skills start you at an automatic bonus. So like when you're rolling a dice in Fate, you use these dice. I'll show you guys one. Or you can just use D6s with a number generator, but you use these dice. And 2 sides have a plus, 2 sides have nothing, 2 sides have a minus, okay? And every minus you roll negatives your result by 1. Every plus you roll adds 1 to your result. And every nothing does nothing, right? And you roll 4 dice on every skill check, right? So like your skills can start, so like you're starting at 0. So like let's say you're doing like a lock pick. You're starting at 0. And to pick that lock, you need to have at least a +3. So you're rolling those D6s and hoping you get 3 pluses, no minuses, maybe enough.
And statistically, that's a little rough. That's a little rough.
But let's say I have lock picking at like a +2. Well, now I'm already at a +2. I only need 1 plus to get up there, to get above it. That's kind of how the rolling works. With the skill pyramid, you have to have the smallest amount of skills at the highest point, which I think is so fucking cool. It means it is inherently a build, because so like my character, so one at a +4, 2 at a +3, 3 at a +2, 4 at a +1. Now, if I move 1 up from +1 to +2, I can't, because then I'd have 4 here and only 3 here. I have to have a pyramid. So I'd have to add a +1, then move something up to a +2. Same with up here. I can't have this without adding 1 to good. So you have to constantly keep juggling up. And those are your build skills. So like my character, he's the best fighter. So I have fight, +4. Then I have shoot, and physique +3. Physique gives you extra stress levels. Then at +2, I have stealth, deceive, and notice, because now I'm in my base spy level stuff. Then at +1, I have explosives, drive, athletics, rapport. So like that inherently is a build right there. Like, and placing those in the specific order you need them to be, with the aspects, and then you have the stunts. The stunts are really cool because then you get to make up abilities based on the stuff you've already made up, which is really cool.
For the stunts, like, the stunts are very specific. They're very narrow. They balance it perfectly.
Yes.
Because it's something that gives you even more bonuses, but it's very restricted in when you can use them. It's only in specific situations.
Or you have to spend a fate point.
It is a fantastic system. I do love this system.
Yeah.
And it is. I can't see your argument as far as its build. Like you have a very like mechanical system of moving things forward and choosing what you move and what you take.
Mm-hmm.
And you are able to just invent your own skills. That makes sense within the context of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still very narrative focused.
Yeah.
It's
narrative. It's build narrative. Like with the aspect, like I have thick-skinned upbringing, right? Originally, I just had thick-skinned there. Actually, no. Originally there, I just had tough. Because I was like, this is going to be for endurance. Me spending fate for endurance stuff. Because he is tough. He was raised badass, right? But then I started to think, how are you going to compel on tough? You can't compel on tough. Nobody can compel on tough. So then I was like, how do I make this still that endurance badass thing, but I also allow you some compels? That's where the interesting narrative build came to it.
And you want compels because this fuels your fate points.
Yes.
Every time I, as a game master, forces you to do something, you get more power points, basically fate points, to use your various bonuses.
I have never played a system.
It's always a back and forth.
Yes, and I've never played a system where a negative outcome is sometimes better than a good outcome.
Right.
I've never played a system like that, ever. This system, you're never really losing and you're never really winning. And that's what I fucking love about it. It is life perfectly encapsulated into this system because you have to think of a negative with the positive, and I think that would be really, really intriguing to build people. Like I just do. When it comes into the skill, I personally, I'm not a build guy. I never thought I was a build guy anyway. I don't like making characters. Okay, it's my biggest weakness as a game master is half the time I go in with half a main bad guy's stats because I just didn't want to fill in the rest.
Right.
I loved making this character. It was awesome. It was like an hour and a half that was a personal adventure for me. And like, I like making the characters like so much that I can't wait to build the next one. Like,
I get it. Like, one of my favorite parts about writing this whole thing was writing the villains as the game master.
Yes.
Building my villains was like, I skipped straight to making the characters, the villain characters, because from doing every other part of the game, because realistically, as the game master, you're writing a story, because that's what Fate is. You're really writing this a basic premise for the story, and the first thing you got to do, because every good story requires good characters, every good adventure requires good bad guys. It doesn't matter what you guys have to do in order to get to the villains, as much as it does is like why it's a villain, obstacle that was put in your way, why it works with the story, and it forces you to make character, and even just thinking about it. And I really do love that. My argument, though, that it's not buildy in that way, not mechanically strategic, is this. It is like when there's a couple of things. Like, first, there's a whole variety of players out there, and I know you're going to think of half a dozen guys you've played with that are like this. There are guys out there that come out there that are just as comfortable working on a PowerPoint Excel sheet as they are a
Oh,
video game.
not where I thought you were
They
going, but
love the math. They love the tinkering. They love that aspect of it.
yeah.
And when you work on something that's super narrative, it's just not going to be in their wheelhouse. It's just not for storytelling is not as much like it. They enjoy it, but doing it, making it,
I think
it's going to be harder for them.
I think one of these days we got to get in touch with Phil and have him make a character in this and get his opinion, because personally I think those
That would be good.
guys I think those guys would really be attracted to the skill tree, the skill pyramid, and they'd be really attracted to creating their own stunts, because then they get to balance their own powers based on the stuff they have. I think that's a really good, interesting, cool thing for them to get into. They get to sink their teeth on not just the numbers, picking numbers, but actually creating where the numbers go and how they work there. I think that could be something they're interested.
This is going to be a fascinating one. We got to do that, actually. There's going to be a part 2 to the Fate Core system, guys out there. We're going to get Phil back on the show, because we both game mastered Phil in the past. He played a Dungeons and Dragons game. I have in my personal life online with me once, and I played with him as a character at your table. I love playing with Phil for a couple of reasons. He knows his systems, so I don't ever have to worry about him as a game master or as another player doing something wrong, because he's really good at this. Second, he's also a good role player. He's a lot of fun to play with and riff with. He's a funny guy. He's clever. He's smart.
Yes.
And he's a lot of fun to have at a table. And so he's got both a very narrative bent and a very mechanical bend. And I think he's the perfect guy to come in here and referee this debate.
Yes, if he can find the time to look at this, I think it would be really interesting. I think the other thing is, too, with Phil, I don't always like having Phil as a player. Not because he is a bad player in any way, shape, or form, but he makes characters that murder my characters. He just does. I can't remember the last time he almost died in a game I was game mastering. I can't
he is a
do
good
it.
Gamer.
I can't do it unless I narratively force it, which I don't like doing. You fall off the cliff, fuck you. That's the only way to do that kind of shit, and I don't like doing it. He is very hard to push, to push tenseness on, which one of the things that I like about this game is, with a player like Phil, you could pressure him no matter how good his build is. And I think that's better for everybody involved. I mean, you remember Astral Drive when he killed that main bad guy, without even fucking thinking about it. That was supposed to be a big fight, and he just fucking offed him. Same with his brother. He kind of did him in fast. He's really good at playing. And you do have those players who I'm good at telling a story. I think I'm good at making up the structure of the story. I'm not the greatest at making stats. And when it comes to bad guys, I tend to drop the ball on making super powerful, scary bad guys. He does not drop the ball. So, he eats my bad guys. He eats them for lunch with a side of fafa beans and a nice Chianti. It would be very hard to eat anybody in this game. And I think that that's one of the cool things about it, is that you still have that build stuff without necessarily being lunch for your players. I thought you were going to actually point out the loot-based players, because there are a lot of those people.
That was actually going to be my next, my next thing. Loot is you actually kind of hit a little bit. There's some tricky balancing with a lot of games out there, and one of the things you said earlier in this episode was how armor and swords kind of break the game. Loot in general is kind of like that. And it works in so many different weird ways, because loot can break a game because it gives too many bonuses. Loot also could be the sole focus, even if it isn't game-breaking mechanics. People sometimes just really like collecting in-game items and getting more money, getting more trinkets. And I've leaned into that as a game master. I'll often give out loot that is based off of like a series. Like I think I had an entire loot system where every fourth dungeon or something, they would come across a coin that was a set of 5. And when they got all 5 of them, it would do something. And it just felt like they were collecting. They felt like little collectors.
Dude.
And every time they wrote down, I saw little lights in their eye. Every time they wrote down, they got a new coin.
I have a player that would be in love with you. His name is Jeremy. He does OMGM with me. He wants fictional stuff. I don't know. That is like, whatever happens is like, loot the body. I want the stuff. And I'm just like sitting there like, man, I don't want to. This is pretend. We're playing pretend. You're not rich now, like, but he wants the stuff. How much do we win if we win that tournament? How much do we get if we get that? Is there treasure there? Like, he wants the stuff. And like, I think that like, but I would argue that this game does that just as good too, because they have things called extras. You write them down. They give you bonuses to certain aspects, and they can have aspects themselves, but they can also have compels. And that's how you balance it. I've already started working on 3 different settings for Fate.
That's actually a really good point.
And one of those settings is a setting called V8s and Velociraptors that I'm really excited to, but there's going to be a lot of cars in it. And those cars, you just build them like a character. And then you make sure that like, okay, so how I was doing the vehicles was like, there's a chassis, there's wheels, there's an engine there, you know what I mean? And like, I can't remember what all the ones that I wanted to put in there was. And then you make sure that like, okay, well, he's got good wheels here, but because they're this kind of wheel, you can also compel in this certain situation. And then bam, you have a car chase system that works because it's narrative and it doesn't matter. And there's your loot. There's your car. You could very easily then collect an engine from another car and switch it out for your engine because it gives you different bonuses in different situations, given the situation. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, the loot is actually these more features, customizable. Yeah.
These features are highly like situation based on what's going on in the story that allows you that modularness and compels the players, not the characters specifically, but the players to think about the modular aspect and what they can do.
Yeah.
So that's actually a really good point. Like, that one actually is a little harder. I'd say like there's a lot that you could do there. There's a lot of opportunity. It is actually, that one actually is kind of a hard one for me to argue against.
I got another one that you're going to have a hard time arguing with. My kid is into this. I would argue that this game is actually better to play with kids than Hero Kids. That's hard for me to say. So here's why. There's no numbers in this. There's very little math. Like, the math is almost non-existent. Hell, there's a chart that they could just look at. They don't even need to do the numbers. On top of that, so we started creating a world together. We didn't actually start playing any games or anything, but I was just looking for something to do with her over the summer. And, I was really into this. I was like, would you want to create a world? And my kid is very, like, artistic. She does a lot of, like, drawings and a lot of stuff. She loves to draw her own characters. She calls them OCs. Original character, and she'll just make them. She'll make a backstory, she'll draw them, and it'll be like a half devil character, and then another character that looks like a ghost with 4 arms coming off of it, all sorts of weird stuff. We're creating a universe for that together. Like, that's what we're doing. And I was like, we could actually publish this. We could use your art for the book. It's Fate Core is an open license, so like,
that's
we can
as adorable as
publish this game. I was like, if we finish this, I will do an actual play somewhere on my channel with players with this stuff. And it's such a cool idea. They're like imaginary friend characters that you get a special phone that you can text them to summon them. But you don't capture them like Pokemon. So it's kind of like Pokemon, but you don't capture them. You have to befriend them. So you have to be friends with them. You have to keep your friendship level high with them. And then they work off friendship. So like, the more friendship in an area, the more of those things will be around that area. And the more in battle or terrible it is, the less there will be. And you can even get bad ones. The coolest thing is everything starts with an S for her for some reason. I think it's because her name starts with an S. But like,
Ha.
it's like, so we decided to call the OCs Sonas, and then the phone that you get is a Shone, and then the place that they all nest in an area is a Shouse, and then the and then the bad ones are called Soffles instead of Awful.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so like,
Okay.
but we have.
That is pretty much the most adorable thing I think I've heard all month.
I have 3 pages written on it. She has one of her, and what's cool is she can make her OCs, her Sonas.
That actually sounds like a really fun game.
Yes, I know, exactly. Like, I'm actually getting excited about it. Like, she could decide, like, how do you be friends with this one? This is Rookie Raven, cheerful and friendly. She has high and low emotions. She has high and low emotional states that you have to weather to kind of be her friend. And then, like, powers, she can fly, and she's a fiery demon magic. I'm sorry, fiery demon magic. But then, like, draw a picture on the back. So, like, she's really getting into it. Like, and it's the only reason that is because everything's narrative. It's all just based on the words she's saying instead of numbers that she has to figure out and do math for.
Yeah. I never thought about it from that angle for kids before, but thinking about it and thinking about I've played Hero Kids with you and Stella.
Yes.
And then I played it with a friend of mine who has a brother who has disabilities.
Yeah.
And there are good things and there are harder things about it, but it's very much like the math clunky. It's simple, but it's very much that tactical. Move a character, swing, tactical.
I'm not saying Hero Kids is bad. Hero Kids is good. It teaches kids tactile games, but like, if your kid is not understanding RPGs because they don't like the tactile part, but they like the storytelling part, read Fate and give it a try, because
that's a really interesting go of it.
Yes.
That's a really interesting go of it.
It's so easy for them to understand a lot of the concepts in here, a lot easier than like roll dice for number 4 attack, you know?
Yeah. I'm really liking that a lot. Now, let's see. The one other thing none of the thing that I've actually said about this game system for myself as a detraction so far has actually been a detraction. My like goes here have been, it works, really well for what it does, but it isn't like necessarily doing other things that other systems try to accomplish.
Right.
And we're gonna have Phil Billy referee us on some of those. I do see your point with the loot. That is actually like a pretty interesting way of handling loot, and I haven't really played a game where they've really made loot a big deal. So we'll see how that ends up rolling. This could be really cool. In the Fate system, I mean, I haven't played myself a campaign where loot was as big of a deal. So I haven't seen it in action, but now that you've talked about it, I could really see spinning that up.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there's so many aspects to that. And you could even, if you really wanted to restrict certain things, you could even say, oh, well, you've got, after you carry 3 items, you're encumbered, and you take the negative aspect encumbered, and it's a free invoke for other people fighting you because you've got too much stuff on you. You know what I mean? It's so easy to balance this because it's common sense. It's common sense based. It's just, well,
that is actually going to be my one detraction that I actually do have for this game. It's the actual detraction, because before my argument's more about like, well, it's really good at this, but it's not this other thing. It's like saying an orange is a really good orange. It's not a banana. It's not a criticism. True. It's an orange.
Yeah. I'd like to hear a real criticism.
My real criticism is that one thing that I feel like it could become a potential issue for Fate at a table is rule lawyery stuff. Because it's so flexible in how you create your scenes, how you use your various elements, and how you can create situations that, given the wrong personality types, given the wrong people, the degree of flexibility could just end up in a fight. Whereas when you have a rule system that is like a rule, it is a block of rules. It's very strategic based. It's very like, okay, you do this, you do this. It feels more like super complex chess than it does, telling a story. People can like have less wiggle room to push things, push narratives, to come up with their own BS because you have a solid set of rules. If it doesn't work, it's in the rules. It's in the room. Just point at the book. It said it doesn't work. Sometimes that can be annoying because the guy pulls out a book and now he's all of a sudden like spending time at the table, forcing everybody to listen to him recite a book, a rule book, like he's a lawyer. But at the same time, you don't have the guy just sitting there bitching and complaining because he thinks that he should be able to just pull a magic wand out of his butt either.
Well, this is hard to argue with because I've definitely met people like that and I've played with people like that. I think my only argument to this is I didn't play with people like that for very long. And I think that if you have somebody who's going to be that ridiculous at a table to where the game master says, hey, I don't like that, let's move on, and they're not okay with it, then I think you need to ask yourself if you really want that person at your table. I mean, I think that even the most ridiculous player I've played with, right? I'm trying to think of the most ridiculous people I've ever played with. Even them still have at least a little bit of respect for the game master to the point where like they say this and then you understand that and then you move on. I would say that there is definitely some points where you could pull out the book and still do some rules lawyery stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Because
it's not complete freeform.
Right. There's predetermined stunts in here that you can just take on your character, which you could read, hey, this is in the book. I don't understand why I can't use this, or like something along those lines. I think that there is some like predetermined rules lawyery stuff that could get a little bit ugly. And you're right, it doesn't necessarily define it like a tactile game does. But at the same time, and again, this is just like, I don't necessarily have an argument for your argument because I think it's really situational. But I think at the same time, I would say that this makes it easier to deal with rules lawyery people because there's nothing necessarily set in stone. The only real rules that are set in stone are like game master's decision is final, and you know what I mean? So to be a rules lawyery person who's arguing with the conception of the rules, as long as you sit down with them at the forefront and be like, this is how I'm going to do this, then there it is. I think also if somebody is making an argument, a decent argument, I think one of the nice things about this game is if you're making a decent argument as to why you should be allowed to do something with the character that you have, and the argument is decent, the game master should be compelled to listen to it and potentially allow it. Even if it's a higher difficulty thing, I think it should be something that is, considered. I think that the problem is that while yes, I see what you're saying, I think at the same time, if you're going to really fight with somebody at the table about that kind of stuff, it creates you were going to fight with them anyway,
Right. Yeah. There's a degree of that. I think it ups it though because the opportunities for it to happen, because they can you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said it's a reasonable scenario. But that's very subjective. If you're trying to use something and you think that it's reasonable, but the GM doesn't think that it's reasonable, you could run into a situation that's I seriously do not understand for the life of me why that is not a reasonable thing. And the GM be like, because it's not. And then things could build because people just have a subjectively different view of what's reasonable.
This is true.
Now, I think there's plenty of ways of getting around that as good game masters. You could just be like, well, I'm the game master, this is rules. And you're right, most players are pretty good about accepting the ruling of a GM. You could also do a system where everybody votes at it. This can sometimes be set up in a very diplomatic way,
Yeah.
where people kind of vote together. Is that a reasonable situation? And everybody, if you have a table who's pretty reasonable themselves, you can figure that out.
Yeah. I think
So
there's
there are
definitely
ways of
to
mitigating
avoid
it.
Yeah, I think there's ways of mitigating it. I see what you're saying, though. I don't necessarily want to discredit what you're saying. I don't. Yeah.
It's tricky. It's
Yeah,
tricky. And it's not that so much that's like this is a bad thing of the game.
Mm-mm.
It's a complex thing that needs to be. It's a thing that needs to be navigated, understood, and handled. Like just about anything else at the table.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's part of the game.
Yeah.
It is a challenge. So I would categorize it as a detraction. But it's just something you have to do as part of playing the game.
Do you have anything else?
And that's probably big. The one other thing I would say, and you know what, I'm going to say this a little bit. It's not really a detraction. One thing I want to dive into though is, so Fate has a lot of different games out there that are built off of modules, campaigns, stuff like that. There's a lot of IPs that are run in Fate's system because Fate is built to really turn. It is almost perfect. If you want to turn a movie into a book into a game, Fate is very storytelling. It's very perfect for that. That is the system to do it in. And the skill list in the Fate game is this long. This is
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Basic system for every skill that you could potentially have. Now, you are completely and encouraged to invent your own skills. And they very much tell you to do that. And I very much appreciate that. However, this basic system puts me in a situation where I'm like, I think you're going to laugh when I say this. What the fuck is crafting supposed to mean?
We got into this debate when we were doing our session 0. We got into the exact same debate.
It up here. You knew I had to bring it up.
Yeah, I got it. I come from single mod where we have the most broad skills that I could possibly think of. So this kind of made perfect sense to me, and I always thought of it like the more specific it is, the more knowledge you have about everything. So like say driving, there's a driving skill in there. And it counts for everything. So if you want to fly a helicopter, it's the same as a car. It's the driving skill. And I remember you being like, that's fucking stupid. And I was like, well, you only have so many points to put in. And if you use all of them in driving different, if you wanted to be a transportation guy, you wouldn't be able to have any other skills. And that's not really fair. But one of the ways I kind of justified this is well, if you've got a 1 in driving, you're pretty good at driving a car. You know how to drive cars. But if you have a 3 in driving, okay, now you can drive helicopters and cars and boats and all sorts of things and just use it like a common sense kind of marker of your skills. So crafting, I understand where you're coming from. I made up a skill for our game because I didn't think crafting covered what my skill, because my skill was explosives. My character is X IRA trained, so I thought that he should have some explosives somewhere in there, but I don't think that he would have a general knowledge of crafting. He would just know explosives and how to make them. So I invented a skill, explosives. And I think that's when you have to invent those skills. I think there's a crafting in the book more so that you can see, they can give you an example of crafting used to make an advantage and crafting used to do certain things and crafting stunts than necessarily use crafting as a skill. But if I were to use crafting generally, okay, I would say a 1 in crafting, you're pretty good at maybe carpentry. Maybe you can craft some carpentry. Maybe you can work on, some cars or whatnot. And then maybe a 4 in crafting means you build shit everywhere. Anything, you can work on rockets if you want. So like it's kind of a weird thing. And another thing too, to your point, crafting catches so many things in the game that it probably shouldn't. Like there's no mechanic skill anywhere in the book.
Right.
I think there's an engineering maybe.
Catch all.
Yeah. There's no mechanic skill. There's no there's no computer skill in the game. There's a lot of things that would be very specific to a certain thing. And I think in those aspects you create a skill,
Yeah. And I'd say like to me and I think that's true. Like comparing joining it with an aspect when you're trying to craft something does make a lot of sense. To get you that boost. I would say also, I know that they have different modules out there. I haven't read any of them yet. I played. There's one I actually want to read because I just love the original IP. It's the Dresden Files. It's the official game for the Dresden Files.
Yeah, it's Fate.
And it's Fate. And it's magic. And in the books and the novels, he makes potions. And he has certain items that he has to craft himself as a wizard, and there are different types of characters. So there's a lot of different like nuance in the book that can translate into complexity of the world in the game system.
Right.
I see these sets of skills as two ways. One, you could, like you said, have it set up. So if you have a +1 in it, you got one thing that you got. If you have a +4 in it, well, you got a shit ton of stuff that you got. The other thing is if you got a 1 in it, you got one like specific thing you can do with it.
Right.
If you got a 4 in it, you got 4 specific things, and this thing goes all the way up to like 8. Like if you keep like trying to level these things up.
Well, and in fairness, you didn't like crafting. We all noticed that. I don't think anybody actually took crafting, and we all ended up making up our own skills for what we would craft anyway. So like,
right.
And in that way, it's better than even my system single mod. In single mod, if you want to drive something, it's navigation skill. Period. End of story. Like there is nothing. It's broad. It's period. Like you're using navigation. Period. Whatever you're piloting, and like that's not necessarily better. So like I think that like at least with this system, it's like, okay, we need this skill. It would kind of fit into crafting or driving or fighting, but I want to make a separate one kind of off to the side here, and I think that like this system allows that and encourages that. I would say when reading the skills section, they do the most encouraging of like making your own skills, even though they list all of them and the uses. And I think really it's more so that they wanted to get out there like, this is how you use skills. This is what this skill would look like in there, so that when you're making your own, you can kind of use that to govern what you're doing. But I understand the complaint. The crafting skill is ridiculous.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I got a feeling that those skills are kind of more like almost skill categories in other like versions of this game, in modules of like the Dresden Files, where if it's fights, it's a category, but what kind of fighting are you doing? Right. Is it hand to hand? Is it with like a like staff, or something like that? Like what kind of like weapon do you use? Right. So it still completely functions, and it functions in both ways. If you're trying to just throw a game together real quick, you can still just use that skill block list and just create characters and go from there. Or you can get like more modular with it because it allows you to.
And certain things, I'd rather have the modularity. I don't want to have a skill for every weapon in a game. I think that drags a game down so fast. So like I want a fighting and a shooting, and that's that. This is range. This is I'd rather have something like that. At the same time, I could understand if like you were making a character that like, well, he knows archery, like just archery, not he can't shoot a gun. So at that point, you want to make up an archery, where you can only use it with bows and arrows and stuff like that. So like I think that there is room for both. But I understand like trying to kind of expound them into different things,
Yeah. Which is actually like, I think it's not really a retraction from this game whatsoever. It's an interesting feature I really wanted to talk to you about, because I think that this is something that really makes homebrewing really fun with this game, because you can be mechanical and story driven at the exact same time.
Yes.
And the skills really make that mechanical aspect very like prominent. Because you can take fight and you can say, okay, fight is a category that's close quarter. You know, pick your sword. And you're like, okay, well, I pick swords. Okay, you have 1. If you make that a 4, you got swords and a bunch of other shit.
Right.
You know, like pick whether you want that stuff to be.
Well, and I want to do a wrestling version of Fate. I'm not going to need any of those skills.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like for pro wrestling, I'm going to much more need
love to see wrestling.
Dude, exactly. I think that like, and yeah, for the creator of game, like this, it lays down the rules almost just as much for character creation and stuff as it does for creating a world inside it. And that's one of the things I liked, is I could put this down and just start working on a module for it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that we've kind of covered our review of Fate. We both love this game.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing an actual play of it. People can see it in action. 2 monsters rolling dice. Really fun game.
Yes. Yeah.
I know that there are other Fate podcasts out there. I haven't listened to them yet, and I do say yet. There's some ones out there that there's a Dresden Files podcast out there that uses the Dresden Files Fate game system. I'm gonna be checking that out. I love the Dresden Files. I love Fate.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun. There's gonna be a lot of fun
here. I'm gonna
here.
have to look up a podcast with Fate now that Two Monsters is done, because I will say I think it's one of the best systems for podcasting, if I had to pick one.
Yeah, I can definitely see why you'd say that 100%. Yeah. Is there any final thoughts on Fate that you want to shout out there?
No, I mean we're at 1 hour and 6 minutes, so we should probably wrap this sucker up. I think that you will be seeing some actual plays from this channel in Fate, without a doubt. So stay tuned for those. But I really love this system. It was both a religious moment and a crisis of faith at the same time for me. It has definitely made me question certain things, and I didn't know that a game could still do that at my age. So I love it. I can't wait to play it.
For me, like, I just want to shout out to everybody. Definitely stay tuned for part 2. I really would love to get Phil on the show again.
Yeah.
And see if we can't get another episode of this. We're gonna have to circle back to this at some point.
It might be a little bit off, because there's a lot of stuff going on in my life that might make things hard to schedule a 3-person podcast, because we do this. We usually record this at a time when everybody else in the world is working, so it would have to be at a different time. But yeah, I definitely want to do it too.
Okay. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here today, Zach?
Not a whole lot. By the time this comes out, Ordo Scriptorium's third hunt will be done. Check that out. And we will probably have a couple episodes of Dual Masters Season 2 up, which will be a lot of fun to check out as well. Other than that, check out everything the channel has to offer. We also do video game reviews. You can check out all the role-playing game stuff on wizardsrespite.com. But we also do video game stuff on Old Man Gaming. Do reviews, do a podcast there for video games. It's much more angry. And we also do actual plays and let's plays and stuff like that. So check it out.
And, Zach said it. Check out the wizardsrespite.com. We also got merch there. Check that out. Please pick some up. Check out Fate. Check out all of our podcasts. They're a lot of fun. And, for everybody out there, just keep rolling them dice.